Antisocial and narcissistic are different in many, many ways than borderline and histrionic. Borderline and histrionic have no stable sense of self, and they're desperate for external validation. Antisocial and narcissistic don't have exactly those same traits. People with antisocial personality disorder have difficulty conforming to the law. They have difficulty respecting others' needs, wants, preferences. They will steal from you just as soon as they will look at you. They are determined to satisfy their own needs because they want to. Complete lack of empathy. Obligations are often ignored unless it suits them. There's a reckless disregard for the safety of themselves or others. Again, they're going to do what they want to do because it suits them at the time, and they don't think about how it may impact other people. They only think about satisfying their own wants, needs, and desires immediately. They have an inability to feel remorse or empathy for other people. They don't feel bad about what they do. If they get caught and they seem to feel bad, it's probably that they feel bad that they got caught, not because they hurt somebody else. They tend to be deceitful, lying, and manipulative because that's how they get what they want from other people. They don't plan with sufficient time. They don't say, okay, I want to buy a car, so I'm going to need to save up money, so let me develop a plan. They say, I want a car, I'm going to go steal one. Or I want a car, you will let me borrow yours. If not, I will just take it from you. Their temper tends to be irritable and aggressive. This is a person who has no regard for your feelings. The only thing that keeps them in check is getting their own wants, needs, and desires met immediately. And if that doesn't happen, they throw a temper tantrum. Very similar, if you will, to a 3 or a 4-year-old in the middle of the cereal aisle, wanting some super sugary cereal and not getting their own way. Now, I don't expect a 3 or 4-year-old to plan and to conform to social norms and yada yada. This is something they have to learn. A 34-year-old, on the other hand, should know better. What are the benefits to this? Well, I think I've said them repeatedly. This person gets their needs met all the time, and they don't care whether other people like them or not, which is another key difference between histrionic, borderline, and antisocial. They are all about being their own best friend and making themselves happy. Now, a lot of times they also have an unstable self-concept, which is why they've put up these walls and said, I don't need anybody. I can make my own self happy. Thank you very much. Everybody I've ever trusted has let me down. Everybody I've ever cared about has betrayed me. So, screw y'all. I'm going to do what I'm going to do for me because everybody else has always done that to me. That all or nothing thinking again. And finally, people with narcissistic personality disorder think that they're special. And the mnemonic special represents the characteristics of NPD. They believe that they are unique. And this, research has shown lately, is not a way of covering up a lack of self-esteem. They truly believe that they are all that, a bag of chips and a soda to boot. They're preoccupied with, and they use the term fantasies a lot in the literature. In this person's mind, it's not a fantasy. They're preoccupied with delusions, if you will, of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. They think they're all that. Put yourself in the mind of somebody who is just the best thing since sliced bread. They feel entitled. They feel entitled for you to worship them. They do need approval all the time. Similar to people with, for example, histrionic personality who need to be the center of attention all the time, the person with narcissism needs to be revered all the time. So they will seek positions, they will seek situations where people have to admire them. They are not above interpersonal exploitation if it gets them power, if it gets them on top, if it gets them to be revered, they'll exploit anybody. They will walk all over them. They tend to be arrogant and very self-important. If you've had someone with narcissism as a friend or as a client, you'll recognize some of these because a lot of times you leave an interaction with them feeling bad about yourself or wondering why you aren't as successful. The person with narcissism really carries a cloud with them that they are the preeminent being, and they lack empathy. They don't really care how it makes you feel. What's most important is how you make them feel and how you make them look. A lot of people with narcissistic personality disorder grew up in a family that communicated these messages. As a child, they got the message, it's not about how you feel, it's how you make us as the parents look. So you will suck it up and you will do what I tell you to, and you will be the best at it, or you will not be loved. There are some varying theories about how narcissistic personality disorder develops, and there's a really good book called Disarming the Narcissist, New Harbinger Publications, that goes into great detail, and it's really well written if you want to take a look at that. Suffice it to say, the person with narcissism is not going to come into therapy and say, you know, I'm having a real hard time getting along with other people, and I want to address some of my character defects. They don't think they have any. So this is a particularly challenging client to work with. Most of the time, the person with narcissistic traits or narcissistic personality disorder only comes to counseling, only comes to therapy because somebody has made them. They have given them an ultimatum. You will go to counseling, or I am going to divorce you and take the kids. Or you will go to counseling, or I'm going to fire you. So the person comes to counseling under duress, and they will present in the office like there's nothing wrong with them, they are perfect, and any hint of criticism or questioning that the therapist does will be met with anger and condescension. Just be prepared for it, because that's how they protect themselves. Because remember, if they are not revered, then they are nothing. And it's very confusing to them if you don't jump into their delusion. So what do we do about it? Well, let's start with the rigid, extreme, and distorted thinking patterns. Whether it's all or nothing thinking that they have to be the best at everything all the time, or that you have to love them all the time, or if you go away, I'm going to die. These extreme thought patterns tend to create a lot of emotional turmoil. So we need to start addressing those. Cognitive processing therapy, the challenging questions worksheet, I love because it gives the person multiple different avenues to challenge some of these beliefs that are keeping them upset. Examine common cognitive distortions with them. All or nothing thinking. If they start talking about something that made them mad, made them scared, or you just wouldn't believe what happened, keep an eye out for all or nothing thinking, because generally it's extreme. Everybody always leaves. Nobody can be trusted. In this case, Counseling 101, we're going to start looking for exceptions. The mental filter is viewing the world through sort of colored glasses, and it's usually not rose-colored that we're worried about. If they perceive the world to be a scary place, then everything they see is going to reinforce that. Think about one time when you got up and you were getting ready for work and you were just in a bad mood. As you're driving to work, are you noticing the bunny that hops across the road and the fact that it was a beautiful sunrise? Or are you noticing the fact that you had to slam on brakes for that stupid rabbit and the sun's in your eyes? Mental filters. Overgeneralization. Partly all or none thinking, but taking one instance, maybe a bad relationship, and saying all men are untrustworthy, or all women are untrustworthy, or this will always happen. Discounting the positive, forgetting to focus on the things about themselves and others that are good. If my clients start talking about somebody and something that was really, really negative, I say, okay, and we talk about it and I hear their point of view, But then I also ask them to find a couple of positive things to say about it. When I go home and the house looks like a tornado hit it, it's frustrating to me. However, the positive, that means that my kids were having a good time, and that also means that my kids are there and having a good time, and I love my children, immensely. So, yeah, is it irritating to go home and find the house looking like a tornado hit it? Mm-hmm. But there are positive things that I can focus on too. So it's choosing which you focus on. Jumping to conclusions. Assuming that just because somebody didn't call you when they were supposed to, that they're leaving. They hate you. No, it could be that they were stuck in traffic, or their phone died, or there are a bazillion different explanations for things. When I hear this type of cognitive distortion, I will stop my client and I will say, okay, that's definitely possible. Give me the facts to support it. And then I want you to tell me 2 other possible reasons this may have happened, or this person may have acted this way. Let's see if we can look at some different perspectives. Once you bring in that idea of reasonable doubt, it starts to make the person think a little bit more and helps them de-escalate some, because it's not, of course, this must be the answer. It's like, okay, what are some possible reasons this might have happened? Now, true, they may come back to the worst possible answer, but at least they're thinking about other options. And eventually, hopefully, you can encourage them to start thinking, for their own sanity and their own health and wellness, what is the least offensive explanation for this? Well, being careful. Obviously, we don't want them to be taken advantage of. And then emotional reasoning. If I'm afraid of something, then it must be dangerous. I'm terrified of bridges. I hate driving over bridges. And there's absolutely no logic to that at all. And I realize this. So if I thought, because I'm afraid to drive over bridges, it must be dangerous to drive over bridges, that's emotional reasoning. And I can counter that by looking at facts and statistics and saying, it's really not dangerous. Am I afraid? Yes. So let's look at the reasons why. And, there are reasons why I was. But bringing that to the forefront of somebody's mind to help them identify irrational conclusions. Then we want to help them examine prior experiences which may be influencing perceptions of current events, so we can help clients challenge their schemas. That's a really long way of saying, if something happened 10 years ago with some other person, and they're expecting every other person today to behave that way, is that realistic? If something happened when they were a child that made them feel helpless and unloved, that sucks. Yeah, we got to deal with that, no doubt. But when that same thing happens today, what does that mean to them? As an adult, as a person who's able to rationalize things and provide self-soothing, is that the best way to react? Is that the best schema to have? And yeah, some people from your childhood are equally as dangerous in adulthood. But sometimes, like being a bully or being bullied on the playground at school, may not be as salient today because you are an adult. And likely that same kind of bullying does not happen. But if you expect it to happen, then you're going to look for it, and you're going to look for signs and be hypervigilant. So we want to examine prior experiences that provide negative interpretations of today's events. Rigid, extreme, and distorted thinking patterns can also keep creeping back in. We need to help people address faulty cognitions that enable them to evaluate and act based on facts, not feelings.
Psychopathy. Is it all about Dr. Lecter from Silence of the Lambs and Norman Bates from Psycho? How about Patrick Bateman from American Psycho? Think again. A psychopath isn't a crazy person from a movie, bloodthirstily running around, ready to kill you on sight. Have you ever wondered if any of your friends could actually be a psychopath? Or is Hollywood's definition of a psychopath more appealing? Contrary to what many people think, not every psychopath is a killer or a criminal. They have a personality disorder known as psychopathic personality, which falls under the Antisocial personality disorder category in the 5th edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. This disorder is characterized by lack of empathy, lack of remorse, and antisocial behavior. Hollywood loves to portray psychopathy as madness to ensure a box office hit, but in everyday life, that's not necessarily true. When it comes to the likelihood of having a psychopath in your life, the odds are not in your favor. According to Dr. Paul Bobiak, 1 in every 100 people is likely to have psychopathic traits, and the probability is even higher as you go up in the office food chain, where you'll find 1 among every 25 managers and executives. The real reasons behind psychopathy are usually narrowed down to genetic factors. Yes, many criminals are psychopaths, but the majority of psychopaths are not involved in criminal acts at all. Here are 10 key traits of psychopaths. 1. Lack of empathy. A psychopath simply cannot feel what everyone else feels. They understand your feelings, but they don't feel them. Even if you're crying your heart out over the death of a loved one, they'll show compassion only to please you, not out of true emotional empathy. 2. Manipulativeness. Always knowing the right strings to pull and the right buttons to push, psychopaths use deception to cheat others into thinking, believing, or acting in certain ways. They only focus on personal gains with no concern whatsoever for how others feel. 3. Irresponsibility. Impulsive behavior and irresponsibility is their lifestyle. A psychopath would never admit to their mistakes. In fact, they turn the tables against whoever accuses them of anything so that the accuser would think again and even feel guilty about their complaints. 4. Narcissism. Psychopaths usually view themselves as smarter, more powerful, and of more worth than everyone else. They have an extravagant, almost theatrical self-perception, thinking that the world revolves around just themselves. 5. Pathological lying. Psychopaths tend to lie, and lie even more. Their lives are spider webs of lies. This ranges from moderate levels to high levels of lying. 6. Superficial charm. Smooth, charming, and attractive, psychopaths aren't afraid to do or say anything they like. That absence of embarrassment attracts others, as it can be misperceived as high self-confidence. Their hawk-eyed glares are mistaken for sexual magnetism by women. 7. Lack of remorse. Psychopaths don't feel guilty for the suffering and pain they inflict on others, or for their actions in general. 8. Proneness to boredom. Forever bored, psychopaths have an exaggerated need for adrenaline overdose, so they're always looking for excitement and thrill. 9. Bullying. Psychopaths are usually abusive towards those that are not of much benefit to them. This could be subordinates, elderly people, children, or in most cases, animals. They like to exercise their power over other fragile beings through bullying, and they may shoot hurtful words at any time without warning. 10. Sucker for power. They have an excessive need to exercise power and control over others. In other words, they are control freaks. Everything must go the way they want it to.
I just want you to know I'm learning to let go. Surrender at last, the pain from the past. Embrace the new day and let